Hello and welcome to Treasure in Every Verse. I'm your host, author and Bible teacher Kevin Madison. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, friends, welcome back. And look, we're still on the new birth, and folks, we're going to be here for a while because I'm walking you systematically through the entirety of the Bible as it explains the new birth. Do you know that the new birth, that is being born again, being born from above? Let me help. Let me give a visual. Folks, I love giving visuals because it helps people understand what's going on. All right, so let's take a look at this. When the Bible says born again from above, what in the world is it literally talking about? And why is that necessary? This word, folks, and if you can connect this dot, simply means created. Created again. You say, how in the world can somebody be created again? Really? Come on. How were you created the first time? See, my parents, get out of here, man. Really? Your parents? Your parents have no ability to create anything. How were you created? God spoke. God allowed. God determined. You want to see it? Here it is right here. I mean, you got to go back to Genesis, folks. This is creation 101. All right? What did God say? Here it is right here. This is creation. Why do plants, the animals, the grass, the fish, why do everything reproduce? Because they want to? Because they determined to do it? Get out of here. That's not what the book teach. That's a human way of thinking about birth. Here it is right here. Let the earth bring forth grass. Why, when you put dirt anywhere, in the smallest little crack, grass grow out of it? Give some space. The smallest, and grass is going to grow. Why? Because God commanded it. The herb that yields seed. So how do it produce? God says the herb yields its own seed. The fruit tree that yields what? Fruit. According to what? Its own kind. I dare you to go find me a pineapple that grows on an apple tree. Go ahead. Go find me a tree that can produce more than its own kind. You won't find one until you get to heaven. Whose seed is where? Where is the seed to everything that reproduces itself? Where is it? According to God, friends, it is in itself. That's why when an acorn falls into the ground, it don't produce as a pear tree. And where is it? On the earth. And it was so. And guess what? It's still so. It was so almost 6,000 years ago. It's still so today. And you can't stop it. No one can stop it. I don't care what they do genetically to all these types of things. No one has ever been able to stop it. Why? Because God gave a decree. And the earth brought forth grass, an herb that yields seed according to its own kind. And the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So that evening and morning was the third day. Listen to this. Then God, who God said about the light and all that stuff. Folks, this is if you think this is only about lights in the sky, then the way you read the Bible, you're simply surface reading. What are you talking about? Friend, you see this right here? Genesis 1? What have I told you all about this book? Based on what God said, the entirety of the book is about Jesus Christ. All of it. The first 3 words, in the beginning. What is the beginning? The Bible tells us in Colossians that the beginning is a person. It's not a time. So the first 3 words of the book starts off talking about something being inside of the man Jesus Christ. The book starts off with Jesus. The last book of the Bible, go read the last 3 verses. It ends with Jesus. He is the beginning. He is the end. And everything in between it is talking about Jesus. So how should you be reading the Bible? You should read it with that in mind, because that is the intent of the book. The intent of the book, folks, is not to tell you how to live, even though it does that. The intent of the book is not to tell you how to raise a family, how to go to church, how to do any of that stuff. The intent of the book is to tell you about God and what God has done, and what God is doing, and what God will do. And I promise you, folks, if you read the book with that in mind, you're going to get a clear understanding of what it's saying. But if you simply read it as God said, let there be light, and that's just it, light, and you think like a human, instead of thinking what the book, how does the book define light? Do you know? Do you know? You should know. I'll show you how the book defines light. Right here. Look at this. God's repeating himself. In the beginning. So what do we say based on Colossians 2 or 3? In Jesus was the Word of God, or God. And the Word, Jesus, was with the Spirit of God. And Jesus was God. That's what the book says. He was where? In the beginning with God. What does he mean, he? His body. The body of the man was in the beginning with God. Why was he there? Because God was inside of him. All things were made through him. Why? Because God needs a body to make things. God don't have an arm. Who has an arm? His body has an arm. God doesn't have a voice. That is, vocal cords. Who has vocal cords? The body of the man does. So when God is speaking, and he's speaking through that body, whose mouth is he saying these things through? He's saying it through the mouth of the man. So God made all things. That's why it says through him. The Spirit made it through the body, making the body equal with God and making the body God. And without God's body, nothing was made that was made. Now, listen carefully. Inside of the man Jesus Christ, what's inside of him? Life. All life. All life form, all life existence. Everything about life lives inside of the man. So how in the world can that be? Because the man happens to be God. Now, as a result, this is what the Bible calls a cause. That is your cause. The cause of life is God. Now, and the life. What do you mean? And the life of God does something automatically. Just like the seed being inside of itself causes the fruit to multiply. When you have the life of God inside of you, something automatically happens. There's an effect. What's the effect of the cause of God being inside of you? Light. There's your effect. In him was life, and the life was light. And it brings light to who? To men. To angels? No. It doesn't bring light to angels. Why not? Because God isn't giving light to angels. He's only giving light to men. Does it bring light to animals? No. Why not? Because God isn't giving light to men. He's giving light to animals. He's giving it only to men. How do I know that? Because the book just told me. So what does he mean by light? That is life. As men, animals, and angels become subjected to what the Bible calls sin. Given what does sin does? Sin is a cause. What is the effect of sin? The effect of sin is darkness. Darkness is another name in the Bible for death or something that is dead. Okay? Now, if sin brings darkness, it's another name for something being dead. Then what do an angel that sin needs? He needs light. God says, I'm not giving it to him. So all the angels, including Satan, that sin, can they get light? No, there's no salvation for an angel that falls. Why not? Because God says, I'm only going to give new life and light to men. You see how simple that is? If you just follow the logic of the book. So what am I teaching you? I'm teaching you to let the book define words for you. So when we get to Genesis, if you understand this right here, folks, you know this is Genesis. This is God explaining Genesis for you. But you know what happens? People separate Genesis from the rest of the book. And they start reading Genesis as if it can stand alone by itself. And it can't. But if you follow not what Kevin is teaching you, If you follow what the book is teaching you, then this stuff starts making sense. You see, only men can have redemption, even though angels have sinned just like men. They can't have redemption. Why? Because God says, I'm not offering it to them. I'm only offering it to men. So, what do a man or a mankind, a human, need if they have sinned? And all have. What do they need? If you are in darkness, what do a person in darkness need? They need light. Who's the light of the world? Jesus himself explains this. He says, as long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. And then Jesus says, hey, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, and if you are a believer, you are one of his fingers, his fingernail, you are his hair, you are part of his body. So you have no choice but to follow Jesus because you're part of his body. If a person follows me, what did he say? They will have the light of life. That's in the same book of John, by the way. So who explains this? Jesus explains it later by calling himself the light. You see how if you just systematically go through the book, you can clearly see this stuff. It's not hard, friends. You know what makes it difficult for most people? Actually, is the books, the chapter divisions, and the thought of reading the book through their own eyes like a human instead of looking at it from God's point of view. That's the hardest thing in the world to do. I get it. I understand it. But hopefully, as I'm teaching you, you can then look at it the way God wrote it. Now, let's finish this little section. And the light. Who's the light? Jesus. Jesus shines something. What does he shine? He shines through the gospel. I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Why? Because it is the only power that God gives unto salvation. What's the gospel? The death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You say the gospel is the preaching of the gospel. No, that is not the gospel. The preaching of the gospel is not the gospel. What's the gospel? Christ is the gospel. The payment for your sin, the separation from God, taken on your behalf, and the life that God gives through the resurrection. Friend, that's the gospel. The gospel has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with anybody preaching it. And the gospel shines. Where does it shine? It shines then inside of darkness. Who is darkness? According to Ephesians 3, you and I are darkness. So what's darkness? Darkness is men. Us. So what has to happen for a person to come to Christ? The light has to come on. That's what has to happen. Watch this. And on your own, the darkness cannot comprehend it. There's no way an unbeliever can ever believe in Jesus Christ. What has to happen? God has to command the light to do something. Now, let me find that verse. Watch this. because it's going to tie this in beautifully. I'm going to show you two verses. God commanded the light. You mean God goes around commanding light? Of course, friend. God made the light. But in this sense, God is talking to his son. Watch this. I'm going to show you two things. And it's in the same chapter. Thank God it's in the same chapter.